right, welcome everybody to Our Experience, the ASCP podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chad Wers, Chief Executive at ASCP. Um, Next to my partner, Tom Hansel of Hansel Health. Tom, how are you?
Good morning. Fantastic. Having a great
Good.
week.
We are thrilled today to have with us one of the pillars of our industry. Has been working in long-term care for a long time. I'll let him kind of get to that and explain his history. But Fred Burke, President, CEO, co-founder of Guardian Pharmacy, is with us today. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Chad. And Tom, look forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, we've started this podcast. This is our second season of the podcast, and we really want to bring in some of the leaders of the industry, some of the people that have innovated in this space, that continue to innovate in this space, and really give a lot of our members, particularly our younger members, some people to look to mentor and to understand, where this industry has been and where it's going. I don't think it's ever been a better time to be a pharmacist in long-term care or to have a pharmacy in long-term care. Some people might argue with me, but I think it's a great time, and we're just thrilled to have you on. So, Fred, let's start from the beginning. How'd you get here?
Well, um, Chad, I started my business. Well, let's start with the very first thing. I am not a pharmacist. I'm an engineer and a business person. So I started my business career long ago at Procter and Gamble. I was a brand manager there and went from there to McKinsey and Company as a management consultant. Wonderful background and experience um, led me to start my first company in 1982. And that the entrepreneurial bug bit me after that. It was just so much fun, exciting. We were number 17 on the Inc. 500, and I was forever smitten with the idea of building a business. So when that company was sold to Dun& Bradstreet, I was looking for my next gig and hanging out at the venture capital firm that had invested in my first venture. And who would call but Kendall Forbes, of all things, a nuclear pharmacist who owned a radioactive laboratory that prepared radiopharmaceuticals down in Louisiana. And his idea was that he wanted to expand, and he felt very competent clinically and operationally, but needed some help from a business standpoint. And he and I worked together for 9 months, doing my due diligence, writing a business plan, securing the financing for us to launch what was my second venture, which was Central Pharmacy Services. We started with his nuclear pharmacy, and the Greenfield startup expanded to 45 of them around the country. And it was a grand experience, a lot of fun, uh, and we can come back to it, but we have a very unique business model that we learned and honed there at Central Pharmacy Services. When it was acquired by Cardinal Health, several of the folks wanted to do yet another gig. And along the way, we met a wonderful person who we consider here at Guardian our spiritual founder, John Saliba in Phoenix, Arizona. And we started our journey with his pharmacy. And his pharmacy was unique in that he was an old hand in the industry, having done a classic long-term care pharmacy that had been acquired by Omnicare. He then went into the industry as an operator of assisted living homes. And there he learned that assisted living needs a completely different type of pharmacy service. And so he launched his pharmacy with the idea of serving assisted living exclusively. And he engineered a platform to do just that. And that's our the genetic makeup of our company and why we have focused so carefully on assisted living. It comes from that very first pharmacy in Phoenix, Arizona. By the way, David Morris, our CFO, joined Kendall and myself back in 1993 when we launched Central Pharmacy Services, and the three of us have been together ever since. We sort of have come to the point where we finish each other's sentences, so to speak.
That's an awesome story. I didn't know that you.
What you wanted to know, but that's the story.
No, it's a great story, and I knew part of that story. I did not know you started at Procter and Gamble. Being a Cincinnatian for as long as I was a Cincinnatian, obviously have a lot of respect and admiration for Procter and Gamble, and really feel like a lot of entrepreneurs come out of Procter and Gamble, and they do a great job of sort of setting up your business acumen and training and preparing you to go out and do those kinds of things. That's interesting.
It really is true. It's a wonderful company. The brand management program is just exceptional. Um, at the time, it was referred to as the PhD of business, to be a brand manager at Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
It was just a very, very special opportunity for me.
Fred, let me ask you a question. As having the heart and the spirit of an entrepreneur, there's that desire's there, but obviously there's a lot of being scared. There's a lot of risk and that kind of stuff. Can you take me back to any of those moments when you were just starting off, especially something like nuclear pharmacy, which really wasn't that much of a given back in the early '80s? Kind of where did you get that drive and that risk type of mentality from?
That's a great question. It's one I ponder a lot because in each of my three ventures, you sort of wake up having done it and you say to yourself, what have I done? There's some extraneous force that was not considered when the decision was made to do it. In the case of my first venture, sales technologies, we were real pioneers. I mean, pioneers, as they say, get arrows in their back, and we were attempting to utilize this new gadget, a personal computer, uh, for a large field sales force to capture all of that data and create for marketeers on the back end marketing information. And we needed a portable computer. And we launched our test with several outstanding large Fortune 100 type companies that could afford something like this. And it was successful, and we were going great guns. But to really roll it out, we needed a portable computer. And in those days, that was all the rage. There were 10 different entrants, and no one could get the battery, the screen size, the storage, disk storage right. And I'll never forget seeing on the newsstand the Time magazine cover article with a sort of RIP tombstone. It said, death of the laptop. Our whole business was, totally dependent upon these computer companies solving that riddle. It ultimately happened, and it was great. But those are the kind of moments that you have in an entrepreneurial world. That's a business plan written in a sterile business school or McKinsey-like environment never turns out quite the way one projected it to be. And it's those twists and turns along the way that make entrepreneuring so much fun and so much, it's so exciting. And it's my greatest pleasure to have taken our business model to its ultimate extreme here at Guardian, and essentially we consider ourselves to be an entrepreneurial incubator. We provide the opportunity and the platform for entrepreneurs to succeed, and that's very gratifying to me.
Yeah, I think your model for pharmacy, long-term care pharmacy, is phenomenal. It's very different than other models that are out there. what was it that attracted you to John and his pharmacy when you made that transition? You had successfully, run and sold two companies. You're looking around, I guess, for something to do, or maybe you weren't. What was the
right?
thing about this industry that was attractive?
Well, I've got to give a lot of credit there to our key outside investor and guardian is Bill Bentley. And all the older members certainly remember that name, perhaps not the newer pharmacists, but Bill built what became the fifth largest drug distributor, Bentley Western, and merged it with the fourth largest to create Cardinal Health, which was at that time the third largest. So he is just a visionary entrepreneur, all around great guy. And he kept saying to us, you know, there is, you want to find a place where there is enduring value being delivered. It's something that will never go away. It's a service that is going to always be needed. And long-term care pharmacy fits that bill. Now, at the time, I had some serious reservations because we operate in a low margin industry. Maybe we can come back to that and talk about it. But, it's a high volume, low margin world we live in. And that was my biggest qualm. We had coming, though, Part D, which we hoped could potentially assist in that area. And Bill was really the driving force to convince me and the team to let's go with long-term care pharmacy. And we didn't know much about it, or hardly anything about it. I mean, so we had to learn. 20 years ago, I was a total novice and probably still am, but a lot of water has passed under the bridge in those 20 years.
Yeah. I like the term incubator, and I think that's a great way to kind of summarize the history of Guardian, because all the last 25 years, you've seen larger pharmacies buy small pharmacies, and they take the people that built those small pharmacies out of the mix. They push them to the side, and they try to absorb that into their larger pharmacy. And that certainly has had some success, but the way that Guardian has done it, the model that Guardian has created, is certainly, I think, a core of your success, because you keep the people that built the business directly involved in that business. And I think you call them presidents, but their reputation, their name, their relationships, and this is a relationship business Chad and I talk about, their relationships not only sustained them prior to Guardian, but it sustained them after the Guardian merger. And so that model has been just phenomenal. And you guys continue to grow. I think you have something around 43 partnerships, if you will, across the nation.
I'd love to just plagiarize that little bit of tape right there. You said it extremely well. You're right. This is a service business. After all, the product, quote unquote, that we deliver to the homes is a pill, and every pharmacy has the same pill. It's what we wrap around that so-called product. It's the services that matter, and people render service. So this is a people business. So our business model, which we formed in our second venture, the radio pharmaceutical venture, really we believe deeply in finding the right partner. We don't call it M&A or acquisition. I mean, basically, we're getting married. So, we find the right partner to work with, and typically they're outstanding clinicians, very service orientated, excellent operators, and can navigate the market very, very well. Unfortunately, they operate in a low margin world. And, it's really hard to build an ongoing self-sustaining business on single-digit margins. I was driving to work recently and listening to my favorite pastime is listening to the guys on CNBC in the morning. And this was when the activist investors were after Salesforce.com, which I have a little soft spot in my heart for Salesforce.com, obviously. But they were complaining that their margins were dipping below 30%. 30%. I'm listening to that saying, gosh, what could we do with margins like that? So these, in today's world, it's very difficult for a single unit long-term care pharmacy to operate successfully and be truly an ongoing self-sustaining business, to generate enough profitability to plow back into the business. Just our replacement capex alone is 2 to 3 operating margin points. Cars wear out, computers die, med carts need replacing and fixing. It requires a certain amount of profitability to even just sustain a business. And so that's sort of what we feel like we bring to the party is they create scale, and we try here in the central office to leverage that scale.
So that brings me to a question. Obviously, we know in business relationships are important. We know in healthcare people want to trust who they're working with. They want to know who they're working with. This is not, buying a product off the shelf. This is your health at the end of the day. And even though you're
Correct.
buying that same pill from somebody, you want to know that they're in your corner, and you want to know that they care about you as a patient,
Mhm.
as a person. All that being said, we've seen pharmacy just continue to plummet down this road of extremely low margins. Managed
Right.
care is putting pressure. How do we? What's your forecast? How do we get out of this sort of model where the only way to survive is to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because the margins are getting smaller and smaller and smaller?
You have very, very eloquently articulated what I think is the number one issue for our industry. It isn't right that you must get bigger and get scale in order to survive. That's particularly in a healthcare world, as you correctly point out, that shouldn't be. Um, so if there's anything that I felt like I could bring to the party, what small bit to our industry has been trying to help on the business side. Um, I really find it frustrating that these outstanding people, pharmacists, that provide tremendous value-added healthcare, are not properly rewarded for what they do, and that's why we started the SCPC, which is sort of the I'll call it the analog to ASCAP on the business side. You guys being the clinical expertise, and together it's been my goal for us to coordinate more closely, and I feel like we finally have gotten there. And the reason is that the hard work that pharmacists do and the value add work they do needs to be rewarded, and our industry needs to have better margins. I think obviously to achieve that, it takes political activity, but perhaps we as a profession have tried to rely upon that a bit too much. Because the Part D program's architecture is such that there's the non-interference clause, it's a commercial arrangement, and the solution to those margins lies in negotiating with, working with, teaming with this oligopoly of PBMs that control our reimbursement. And certainly the political and policymakers can assist with this, but it comes down to the industry to do a better job of negotiating. And our friends over in retail have not helped us at all. You know, they get to sell barbecue pits and milk and stuff like that, you know, and use their pharmacy almost as a loss leader to get people in the
Yeah.
store. We can't do that. We
Right.
live and die based on the drugs that we sell to these frail and elderly residents of long-term care settings that we serve. And therefore, the reimbursement for those drugs needs to be adequate to compensate us for the work that we do, by the way, which is mandated by the requirements of participation for, you know, Part D program. So
Yeah.
it is a major need in our industry to do a better job of explaining what we do and making the case and the rationale for why we should be paid accordingly for what we do.
You bring
Right.
up a great point about. I've said this for a long time. We're our own worst enemy in pharmacy sometimes, and I think historically, that connection to a retail space, whether it's in a grocery store or a big box store. We used to joke about the pharmacies in the back because you got to go all the way to the pharmacy to get your meds,
Right,
and on your way out, you spend $400 on, at the time, CDs and movies and candy,
right,
garbage. But we allowed pharmacy to be a loss leader instead of emphasizing the fact that it still needed to stand on its own. And
right.
now we're sort of, long-term care, to your point, we don't have that. So we have to be able to stand alone, and we're fighting some of the forces that have occurred on the community and chain side in the retail space, which makes
Right.
it more difficult.
Yeah.
Back.
So with that said, I think Guardian is an expert at creating and even encouraging autonomy with your pharmacies, with your owners. Tell me a little bit kind of that core value, because it would be easy for someone in your position to want to maybe to control outcomes, control operations, but you've done the opposite. You've allowed that autonomy. You've allowed them to explore different ideas and do it their way, and it certainly has to make business sense. But how does that? Can you tell everybody kind of how that core value that you guys have implemented has led to your success or helped your success?
It is the core reason for our success. It starts with partnering with the right folks, of course, um, but gee whiz, I'll go back to Chad to Cincinnati. One of the things that drove me crazy about this wonderful company, Procter and Gamble, is that they thought all knowledge emanated from the building at the corner of Sixth and Sycamore,
In the ivory tower.
the Ivory Tower.
Literally.
Literally, you're right. With the White Castle down there right beside it. um, that we know is not true, certainly not in healthcare, certainly not with clinicians that are professionals that are rendering important clinical service to these residents. So, the best way is to get out of the way to be successful. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't things that we can't do. There are a lot of things we can do to help in using our scale, as I mentioned. I mean, over time here at Guardian, we've invested in different functions. You know, at the beginning, of course, we had to have accounting and finance and treasury and HR. And that was the beginnings. But over time, we added a national sales group as we expanded our footprint. We're able to, you know, gain interest in our amongst the larger accounts. We've added operational expertise, clinicians, mostly people in the field who have left the local pharmacy to help here in the support group for all the pharmacies. The latest investment here was in PBM negotiation and management. That's something that's really helped us a lot. So these are the things that we can do for our partners who are out there, operating in a dog eat dog, very, very complex world. I'll say this: the hardest job in gardening is to be a pharmacy president. I have so much respect for them because they're operating a large business, 20, 50, $100 million business that is cross-functional in nature. All of the functions they have to deal with, from sales, account management, operations, finance, HR, the gamut. Regulatory, very important. Compliance is obviously a critical area of our business. And these pharmacy presidents are truly remarkable business people because they've got this entire business unit that they're responsible for to include all the various functional elements. And our job here is to help them succeed.
I mean, I think it's apparent. I mean, I can't tell you how many of the presidents and the co-owners of the pharmacies I've met, and all of them to a person are the kind of people you describe. They're innovative. They care about their patients. They do have to run that gamut of, pharmacy has a tendency to like give stuff away too much and maybe be too
Right.
benevolent sometimes, and they have to sit at that position and weigh all that and not be too benevolent and not give too many things away, but still provide the high level of service that's required in our space. I mean, we're taking care of vulnerable older adults. I mean, there's no greater mission than that, and they're tasked with doing that. And to your point, in an extraordinarily complex world of how do you get paid for this and how do you make the numbers work. So I'm sure, I speak for myself, but I'm sure all of them appreciate that you've taken an interest in this business, that you've applied your skill set and your business acumen to help them, because at the end of the day, we're pharmacists. We need that. We need business people to help us. We're not all born with that acumen. So I'm sure I speak for everybody when I say that. And you might not remember this, but I visited your office when I was working for Skilled Care, probably way back in before 2010 for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I met Kendall. I can't remember if I met your other partner, but I remember meeting Kendall. But what I remember, and this is going to take us off topic, you're either an F1 like fan. There was a race car theme, I think, in your office. In your office,
Yeah.
there's
That's
something there. Like, what is that? Is it an F1 race car fan? Or are you just a race fan?
I'm a racing fan and I'm a racer.
Yeah.
So I switched over to vintage racing back in 1990 and have done it ever since. So I race old sports cars on the vintage racing circuit.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It's a lot
So,
of
so
fun.
tell me about that. Like, what kind of car do you race?
I have two, a 1962 Cooper Monaco, and that you mentioned Formula One. This is a sports racing car, so it's not a street car.
Yeah.
It's the chassis is the Formula One chassis that won the world championship in '60 and '61.
Oh wow.
Cooper won with this chassis. It's widened just a little bit, and it's got an all-enveloping body work. It's powered by a 3-liter V12 Ferrari engine, and it has a lot of history in U.S. sports car racing annals. So that's a lot of fun. And then I have a small bore sports racer, a '57 Elva that's powered by a 1-liter Cubs Climax engine. And back to Formula One, Elva, the car company Elva, lives on today is McLaren.
Oh wow.
And Frank Nichols, the owner and founder of Elva, was stricken with cancer. Bruce McLaren bought the company, and it carries on today. Is the McLaren car company.
That's. I knew I remembered that somewhere.
Yeah, you
Correct.
got a great memory.
So
So how did that start? How did that start for you? Did you just get a bunch of speeding tickets, and your wife said you might
We
better
got to
put
go
you inside
legit.
of a racetrack,
I
or
had an MG in college, and along the way, have had lots of British sports cars, and decided I might just try my hand with the SCCA, and quickly found out that I didn't have the budget nor the skills, and with children and all, and uh, but later in life, I still had the Austin Healey, so I put it back on the track on the vintage circuit. That's how I
It's so
started.
much fun.
awesome.
Mm.
It's a great
Yeah, it
hobby.
is. You'll have to let us know when you race sometime, and we'll have to come out and check it out.
It's been tough the past year or two with my aging. I have various issues that have not allowed me to race. So I'm hoping that I'm getting over those and can do it again.
So, what can you tell us? So, how does that help? I'm fascinated when people have these neat hobbies. How does the racing help you on the business side?
Concentration, period, over now. It's very, very important in business to focus on whatever the issue is of the moment wholeheartedly, no distractions, focus, and concentrate and solve that problem. Trust me, when you're out there on the track, racing wheel to wheel with other cars, you cannot let your mind wander. I remember one day, it was at VIR, one of the most lovely sports car tracks in America. And one of the series of turns is very daunting, the uphill S's, they're called. And you enter this at very high rate of speed, and you're making these turns without lifting off the throttle or braking. And I remember it was Masters Day, and entering those S's, my mind wandered, and I was wondering what was going on at the Masters until I shook myself and said, "You got to focus," and that's what success in business requires: is focus. And I
Yeah.
think that's it's helped me with that.
Well, I don't think there's anything more perfect for what we're in today, pharmacy wise, than being focused on that reimbursement component
Right.
from PBMs
Agree.
and other payers. I mean, that is
Agree.
clearly what we need to be aimed at. So I love that analogy.
Absolutely.
Well, with Guardian's influence and support, I think that we can get there with companies like Guardian. Certainly everybody's talking about PBM reform, but it really takes companies like Guardian to have a heart for pharmacy, and not necessarily for corporate America, but for the independent pharmacy
Mhm.
owners, and to fight on that PBM reform. So we certainly have appreciated what Guardian has done to this point, and will continue to do.
Thank you
But
for
let me
that.
ask
Really
you,
appreciate that.
let's take you back 20 years and say it's still 2024, but now you're 45, 50 years old. Would you do it again, starting right now, understanding what's going on with PBMs, understanding what's going on with the IRA, and those type of things?
Absolutely.
Do you think that this is a business you would reinvest in?
Absolutely.
I love that.
And
That's a great
the
question.
reason, the reason is very simple. I, I don't get the privilege of providing care to these frail and elderly residents, but I'm doing my part to help those who do. And it is really, really gratifying to have a job where when I walk in the door every morning, I feel like I'm helping someone. And that's our industry. Long ago I sold toilet paper for Procter and Gamble. It's an important product, but it doesn't quite have the same,
Not the quite mission. Same.
pizzazz as this.
Well, during COVID, that's very
That's right.
valuable during that time.
um, but yes, I would do it again. It's been a, a difficult journey. One of the things that I think I'm speaking now for the industry, and in fairness, we didn't know what was in store for us with Part D. And I don't think the industry paid enough attention to negotiating those first contracts with Part D like we should have. the largest player in our industry did, and it served them extremely well.
Yeah.
But the independents didn't, and it was a really tough go from '06 up until 12 or so when the generic tsunami came, and
Hmm.
that's what led us to do making an initiative to negotiate more better contracts. But I think we as an industry were focused more on affecting public policy in those days because that's where our reimbursement derived. Um, and the Part D program was a completely new paradigm where it's a commercial, negotiation. And I think it's taken the industry a couple of decades to sort of find its footing and figure that out. Not that public policy isn't important. We obviously are very supportive of that with our time and our treasure. Because it can provide, I call it the air cover, if you will, for those on the ground that are negotiating these commercial arrangements. But that's really where the solution lies, in my opinion.
Yeah, and PBMs have really been an unregulated middleman that's been able to take advantage on both sides, and
Mhm.
now it's out of
Yeah,
control, and so there's certainly a need for PBM reform.
yeah.
Well, Fred, I appreciate you being on the podcast. I mean, you're definitely a pillar of our industry. Appreciate your leadership and what you've done at Guardian, what you continue to do, and just I'm in awe of what you've built as a business. So thanks for
Thank
being on
you.
today.
Makes me feel good. If you would indulge me, I'd like to just talk about one other thing that
Sure.
I'm very proud of. It it struck us one day that our pharmacists are behind a curtain, if you will, doing extremely important work. I mean, the pharmacists are the ones that are getting the residents on the proper drug regimen, and that means both clinically and in accordance with the PBM formulator, which drives their pocketbook. Um, and we do all this work, and no one knows what we do. And one of the things about Guardian that I'm very proud of is that we've invested heavily in data analytics. Um, and we have what we call our data warehouse. Um, and that team set about the task of, of trying to track what our pharmacists do. And we have that product, if you will, analytics product, and it is truly amazing to be able to see the value add that the pharmacy profession brings to the lives of these people that heretofore has just been sort of, we do it, we're expected to do it. That's your profession. You're a pro and you get it done, but you don't get credit for it. And that's one of the things I'm really gratified about. Because in the end, really what our industry does is two things. We tend to fall into the trap of talking about all the services that we render 24/7,
Mhm.
delivery, compliance packaging,
Features,
blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. But what we're really doing, all those things work together to A, get the resident on the proper drug regimen, and B, provide the platform by which they can be administered safely and effectively and achieve adherence. So it's a great thing in healthcare to be able to say, we bend the cost curve in two ways. We get people on the right drugs and we make sure they adhere to that regimen. And for us to be able to generate some of the analytics to prove that is really important. That's sort of our next mission
And
here.
I think it's huge. I think it's we still have to do a better job of getting it out there so that people understand it. But we spend a lot of time here talking about nursing homes and assisted living, and nursing homes are not really places anyone desires to end up. But what I tell
Mhm.
people is you've got so many advantages in a nursing home from a medication management perspective. You've got one pharmacy, you've got generally one prescriber. Your nurse is part of your administration plan, and even in assisted living, in some cases, they're part of it. That alone provides that platform for safe medication use. When you go out into the community and you go to a naturally occurring retirement community, or even an assisted living that doesn't have a contracted pharmacy, doesn't have the services of a consultant pharmacist, those medications for those people are a mess. And it's because of the work that the long-term care pharmacies do in the assisted living and skilled nursing environments that sets those patients up a little bit better than what we see in those sort of unmitigated, unmanaged environments. And we've got to do a better job, we at ASCP for sure, of getting that information out there that, hey, I know you don't like nursing homes, but guess what? This is what it looks like from a med management standpoint, and it's good. This is what it looks like out in the community when you have nothing, you have nobody involved, you don't have a special pharmacy involved, you don't have a pharmacist involved. We've got to get that message out, because you're exactly right. That's where we can make inroads into better reimbursement, and I like the way you put it, better rewards for what you're doing. For
Exactly.
sure. Yeah.
Because in the end, we can't keep doing what we're doing unless we can achieve the goal of being an ongoing, self-sustaining business enterprise.
100%. Yeah.
That requires some profitability. We certainly don't achieve excess profitability.
Right.
No one can accuse us of that.
Right.
But we need enough
To
to
survive.
reinvest in the business so we can keep it going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And to your point, Fred, data is our generation's oil now.
Mm-hmm.
This is what everybody's mining. This is what everybody is utilizing. Before we leave here, I was told to ask you about Pete's Place in Oklahoma.
About
Do
what?
you know about Pete's Place in Oklahoma? Do you remember a story on
You've
that?
been talking to Tanner and Kyle.
I was just visiting him last week. He said, "Ask Fred about Pete's Place." So he had a good time down there.
That is a trip into another world. That's all I'll say.
That'll be for our next podcast we do with you.
Thanks again, Fred. Really appreciate you being on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys both. I really appreciate what you're doing. The work of ASCAP is so critical, and you're doing great.
Thank you.
You've really brought vitality and energy and positive influence to that organization. So I'm pleased and proud for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
We're going to get there.
And Fred, I can just tell you personally, I've watched you and known about you, and I've heard about you for a very long time, and we've had multiple small interactions. But I've never heard one bad thing about you as a person, about you as a mentor, about you as a leader. So, I can't speak for all pharmacists, even though we tend to do that a lot. But I could tell you from the pharmacies, from long-term care pharmacies, thank you for being a mentor, not just to Guardian, but to all of us across the nation. Thank you for what you've done and dedicated your life to doing that, even though you're not a pharmacist, but you're certainly a mentor in pharmacy.
Thank you so much for that. That means the world to me.
And we're gonna find you on a racetrack at some point. I want to see.
All right, great.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. We'll see you on the next episode of Our Experience.